Long before the sorting hat became a fixture of Hogwarts tradition, long before it was treated as a familiar and even comforting presence in the Great Hall, the magical world that produced it existed in a state of fragmentation, insecurity, and profound uncertainty. This uncertainty was not merely social or political in nature, but educational, philosophical, and deeply personal, shaping how magic itself was understood and transmitted across generations. In the absence of centralized instruction, magical knowledge functioned much like folklore. Spells were altered as they passed from one practitioner to another. Names changed, incantations drifted, and intent often mattered more than technical precision. What survived was what worked often enough to be repeated, not what was safest or most elegant. This led to an uneven magical landscape, in which brilliance and danger frequently coexisted within the same practice, and where innovation was as likely to cause harm as advancement. To understand the origins of the sorting hat, it is necessary to set aside the image of Hogwarts as a stable, centuries-old institution, and instead return to the unstable conditions that made such an institution necessary in the first place. In the centuries preceding the founding of Hogwarts, magical Britain lacked anything resembling a unified culture of education. What existed instead was a patchwork of practices shaped by geography, family lineage, and necessity. In rural regions, magic was often integrated into daily labour, used quietly to improve harvests, mend tools, or protect livestock. In more densely populated areas, magical ability was concealed more carefully, expressed through subtler charms and household enchantments that could be explained away if observed. Instruction within families varied widely. Some magical lineages maintained careful records, passing down spellcraft through written notes, coded symbols, or memorized verse designed to preserve accuracy. Others relied almost entirely on demonstration and imitation, teaching children to replicate effects without fully understanding underlying principles. In these households, success was measured pragmatically. If a charm worked, it was considered sufficient, regardless of its inefficiency or risk. For children born into families without magical knowledge, the experience was markedly different. Accidental magic emerged without context or explanation, often interpreted as illness, curse, or divine intervention. These children frequently learned to associate their abilities with fear or shame before anyone recognized them as magical at all. In the absence of guidance, suppression became a survival strategy, sometimes lasting years before discovery by the wider magical community. Traveling magical tutors existed, but they were rare and inconsistent. Some were skilled educators who moved discreetly between communities, offering instruction to multiple families. Others were opportunists, possessing limited knowledge and motivated more by payment than responsibility. Without regulation or oversight, there was little distinction between the two, and families often had no means of evaluating a tutor's competence until harm occurred. This fragmented educational environment had long-term consequences. Magical theory developed unevenly, with some disciplines advancing rapidly while others stagnated. Ethical considerations were localized rather than shared, leading to significant variation in what was considered acceptable magical practice. The absence of standardized education also made collective problem-solving difficult, as practitioners lacked common terminology or conceptual frameworks. Against this backdrop, the idea of a centralized school represented not only an educational reform, but a cultural one. It proposed the creation of shared standards, shared language, and shared responsibility. Hogwarts was envisioned as a place where magic could be taught deliberately rather than incidentally, where knowledge could accumulate rather than dissipate, and where young witches and wizards could learn not only how to wield power, but how to understand its consequences. Magic existed, but it was not organised. Knowledge moved slowly, if at all, and what one family understood deeply might be completely unknown beyond the boundaries of their home or village. Instruction, when it occurred, was informal and inconsistent. Spells were learned through imitation, trial and error, and oral tradition rather than through systematic teaching. The result was a magical society that was rich in localized practice, but dangerously uneven in competence and safety. For many young witches and wizards, the discovery of magic was abrupt and frightening. Accidental magic manifested without warning, often during moments of emotional stress. Some families recognized these signs and responded with patience, guiding children toward control and discretion. Others reacted with fear, interpreting uncontrolled magic as a liability rather than a gift. In households where magic was poorly understood or actively discouraged, children were sometimes taught to suppress their abilities entirely, learning secrecy before learning control. The consequences of this inconsistency were severe. Untrained magic was volatile. Potions brewed without proper instruction produced harmful effects. Charms cast without understanding backfired. Magical creatures were mishandled, and injuries were common. Without shared standards or oversight, there was no reliable way to correct dangerous practices before they resulted in lasting harm. Magical knowledge often died with individuals, vanishing from the world rather than being preserved or refined. Outside the home, the broader social environment offered little reassurance. Magical families lived within a social fabric that explained misfortune through superstition and divine judgment, and unexplained phenomena were often treated as evidence of wrongdoing rather than anomaly. In such conditions, even beneficial magic carried risk. A healed injury, an unusually successful harvest, or an avoided illness could invite suspicion as readily as gratitude. To mitigate this danger, magical communities developed informal concealment practices long before formal secrecy laws existed. Simple disillusionment charms, memory-altering spells of varying sophistication, and enchanted objects designed to divert attention were employed unevenly across regions. These techniques were rarely standardized and were often passed down with minimal explanation, increasing the likelihood of misuse. In some cases, poorly executed concealment caused more attention than it prevented. Relocation was another common strategy. Families moved frequently, abandoning established homes when patterns of suspicion emerged. This transience disrupted continuity of instruction and eroded communal memory. Children educated in one region might find themselves isolated in another, cut off from mentors and peers who understood their abilities. Over time, this instability reinforced the sense that magic was something to be hidden rather than developed. The psychological consequences of these conditions were significant. Magical children learned early that discretion mattered more than curiosity, and that silence could be safer than understanding. This orientation toward concealment shaped how many witches and wizards approached power itself, prioritizing survival over mastery. While effective in the short term, it limited innovation and discouraged the sharing of knowledge across communities. In this context, the proposal to establish a permanent, protected institution represented a profound shift in priorities. Hogwarts was conceived not merely as a refuge, but as a declaration that magic could be practiced openly within carefully maintained boundaries. Its founders envisioned a space where concealment would be replaced by structure, and where fear could be addressed through education rather than avoidance. Medieval Britain was shaped by superstition and suspicion. Disease, famine, and unexplained disasters were frequently attributed to supernatural causes, and magic, when glimpsed or rumoured, became an easy target for fear. While persecution varied across regions and eras, it was persistent enough to shape magical behaviour. Families learned to live quietly, to move when necessary, and to distrust attention. Secrecy was not a preference, it was a survival strategy. This climate made collective learning extraordinarily risky. Bringing magical children together increased the chance of exposure. Teaching advanced magic risked drawing notice from non-magical communities that already viewed the unexplained with hostility. Communication between distant magical families was unreliable, limited by dangerous travel and the absence of widely accessible magical transportation. As a result, the magical community remained fragmented, isolated by both geography and fear. It was within this unstable world that the idea of a unified magical school began to take shape. The concept itself was radical. To gather magical children into one protected space, to teach them openly, and to sustain such an effort across generations required extraordinary courage and vision. It demanded a location that could be concealed, defended, and magically reinforced over centuries. It also required agreement on a more difficult question. Not simply how magic should be taught, but why it should be taught at all. The need was not theoretical. Accidents involving uncontrolled magic were common. Talent was wasted. Knowledge disappeared. The magical community faced a pressing dilemma. Could it continue to survive through isolation and secrecy alone? Or was it time to create institutions capable of preserving knowledge, culture, and safety in a more deliberate way? Hogwarts was conceived as an answer to that dilemma. It was not merely an educational experiment, but a response to crisis. It represented a belief that magic could be taught responsibly, that community could exist without inviting destruction, and that cooperation offered a more sustainable future than isolation. The individuals who had found Hogwarts were themselves products of this fractured world, and their philosophies did not emerge in isolation from the conditions they sought to address. Each founder's values reflected a particular response to the instability, fear, and inconsistency that defined early magical life, shaped by personal experience as much as abstract belief. Godric Gryffindor's emphasis on moral courage can be understood as a reaction to the paralysis induced by fear. In a world where secrecy and withdrawal were common survival strategies, Gryffindor believed that excessive caution carried its own dangers. Avoidance allowed injustice and ignorance to persist unchallenged. His conception of bravery was therefore not reckless defiance, but principled action undertaken with full awareness of risk. He valued the capacity to act ethically under pressure, viewing courage as the foundation upon which other virtues could operate. Helga Hufflepuff's commitment to inclusion and fairness reflected a different response to fragmentation. She observed how uneven access to instruction created artificial hierarchies within the magical community, privileging those born into knowledgeable families while leaving others vulnerable. Hufflepuff rejected the idea that worth could be measured by pedigree or early aptitude alone. She emphasized diligence, cooperation, and patience, believing that sustained effort within a supportive environment could cultivate ability as effectively as innate talent. Rowena Ravenclaw approached the problem through the lens of understanding. She recognized that many of the dangers associated with magic stemmed not from malice, but from ignorance. Spells misfired because they were poorly understood. Potions failed because principles were memorized rather than comprehended. Ravenclaw's priority was the development of critical thought, encouraging students to question, analyze, and refine magical practice. For her, knowledge was both a tool and a safeguard. Salazar Slytherin's philosophy emerged from a heightened awareness of vulnerability. Having witnessed the consequences of exposure and betrayal, he concluded that preservation required restraint. He believed that magical families accustomed to secrecy across generations were better equipped to manage the risks inherent in powerful knowledge. While his emphasis on lineage would later become a source of conflict, it originated in a desire to protect the magical world from external hostility rather than to dominate it. These perspectives were not mutually exclusive, but they were not easily reconciled. Hogwarts was founded as a compromise among them, an institution designed to balance action and caution, inclusion and control, curiosity and responsibility. The house system embodied this compromise, providing distinct environments aligned with each founder's values, while maintaining a shared institutional framework. Understanding the Sorting Hat's origins therefore requires understanding the founders not as symbols, but as individuals negotiating competing solutions to a shared crisis. The Hat was created to preserve that negotiation beyond their lifetimes, embedding their diverse judgments into a single mechanism capable of continued interpretation. They emerged from different regions, held distinct values, and envisioned different solutions. What united them was not complete agreement, but recognition of a shared problem. Godric Gryffindor believed in moral courage and the necessity of action guided by conscience. Helga Hufflepuff valued patience, fairness, and inclusion, viewing education as a communal responsibility rather than a privilege. Rowena Ravenclaw emphasized understanding and intellectual rigor, believing that magic wielded without comprehension was inherently dangerous. Salazar Slytherin focused on control and preservation, convinced that restraint and lineage were essential to the survival of the magical world. Together, these four individuals envisioned a school that could gather magical children into safety while offering structure without erasing individuality. As Hogwarts took physical form, another challenge quickly emerged, one that would shape the institution as deeply as its walls and wards. The very success of the school's founding vision created pressures that its creators had not fully encountered before. As word spread through magical communities that a protected place of learning existed, families sought admission for their children in growing numbers. What began as a carefully curated group of pupils quickly expanded into a population too large to be managed through informal judgment alone. In the earliest intake years, admissions were handled through personal networks. Families known to the founders or to trusted intermediaries were contacted discreetly. Children arrived in small numbers, allowing the founders to observe them closely and make considered decisions about placement. This approach was effective while the school remained small, but it did not scale. As the reputation of Hogwarts grew, so too did the diversity of its applicants, both in background and temperament. The founders faced a practical dilemma. they could restrict admission severely, preserving manageability at the cost of excluding capable students, or they could expand access and risk losing the coherence that made the school viable. This tension mirrored their broader philosophical disagreements, particularly those concerning inclusion and preservation. It also exposed the limits of relying on personal discretion in an institution intended to endure. Manual sorting, carried out entirely by the founders, became increasingly contentious. Decisions were questioned, not out of distrust but out of concern for consistency. A placement that seemed appropriate to one founder could appear misguided to another, especially as student numbers rose and individual familiarity declined. Without a standardized mechanism, disagreements risked undermining the legitimacy of the house system itself. It was within this context that the idea of an enduring sorting mechanism gained urgency. The founders required a system that could replicate the reasoning they applied individually while operating independently of their physical presence. Such a system needed to evaluate students holistically, accounting for temperament, motivation, and capacity for growth rather than relying on simple indicators. It also needed to command trust both from faculty and from the students whose futures it would shape. The sorting hat emerged as the solution to this problem. By embedding their collective judgment into a single, enchanted object, the founders created a mechanism capable of maintaining consistency without rigidity. The hat did not replace human oversight, but it provided a shared reference point, reducing conflict and reinforcing confidence in the fairness of placement decisions. This transition marked a critical moment in Hogwarts' institutional development. Sorting shifted from a personal act to a procedural one, mediated by magic rather than personality. Yet the procedure retained flexibility because it was designed to think rather than simply execute rules. In this way, the sorting hat preserved the founders' intent while allowing the school to grow beyond their immediate control. If students were to be taught together, they would require smaller communities within the larger school, environments capable of providing guidance, belonging, and identity. From this need, the house system was born. The houses were not intended as rigid categories or measures of worth. They were educational environments, each reflecting the values of its founder and designed to support different approaches to learning and growth. In the earliest years, the founders sorted students themselves, observing, questioning, and guiding children toward the communities where they were most likely to thrive. This process relied heavily on personal judgment and close familiarity with each student. However, Hogwarts was never meant to depend indefinitely on its creators. The founders understood that institutions often fail not at the moment of creation, but in the generations that follow. A system dependent on personal judgment fractures when that judgment is no longer present. What Hogwarts required was continuity, a way to preserve discernment itself beyond the lifespans of its founders. The solution they devised was both practical and symbolic. Rather than creating a council, a rotating office, or a written set of admissions laws, the founders chose to anchor the sorting process in a single, enchanted object. This decision reflected both the limitations of their time and their understanding of how authority functioned within magical culture. Written law could be misinterpreted, councils could fracture, objects, by contrast, carried continuity. An enchantment properly constructed could endure unchanged while still responding to context. Godric Gryffindor's hat was selected not because of any inherent magical quality, but because of its symbolic neutrality. As a personal belonging rather than a public artifact, it carried no pre-existing institutional authority. This made it an ideal vessel for collaborative enchantment. The act of transforming a private object into a public mechanism mirrored the founders' broader project of transforming individual knowledge into shared culture. The enchantment itself represented a level of magical sophistication that was rare even among highly skilled practitioners. Canonical accounts indicate that all four founders contributed their intelligence to the hat, a phrasing that implies more than simple spellwork. Intelligence, in this context, suggests the embedding of evaluative frameworks, memory structures, and interpretive capacity. The sorting hat was not programmed with instructions, it was endowed with judgment. This distinction separates the sorting hat from most other enchanted objects. Many magical artifacts respond to specific triggers or conditions. They perform predefined actions when activated. The sorting hat, by contrast, engages in analysis. It receives information, processes it, and arrives at conclusions that are not predetermined in form, only in purpose. This makes it closer to a constrained cognitive construct than to a conventional tool. Each founder's contribution shaped this cognitive framework. Gryffindor provided the moral dimension, ensuring that courage and ethical action were weighed as more than performative bravado. Hufflepuff embedded safeguards against exclusion, emphasizing fairness and the potential for growth over static assessment. Ravenclaw structured the hat's reasoning capacity, enabling it to analyze complexity and resist simplistic categorization. Slytherin contributed strategic awareness, embedding attention to ambition, foresight, and the management of power. The result was an enchantment capable of holding tension without collapsing under it. Contradictory inputs were not errors to be resolved mechanically, but factors to be weighed. This design choice explains why the sorting hat can hesitate, reconsider, and even converse with students during sorting. Dialogue is not a flaw in the system, it is evidence of deliberation. By choosing this approach, the founders avoided a trap common to early institutions, the attempt to eliminate ambiguity. Instead, they acknowledged ambiguity as an inherent feature of human development and designed a system capable of engaging with it. The sorting hat's origins therefore lie not only in magical innovation, but in philosophical restraint. According to well-established wizarding records, the sorting hat was originally Godric Gryffindor's own hat, later enchanted by all four founders. Each contributed their intelligence and values to its enchantment, embedding within it the capacity to evaluate students according to multiple dimensions rather than fixed criteria. This was not a simple charm, but a deliberate attempt to preserve judgment rather than rules. The sorting hat was designed to reason, to adapt, and to listen, and the magical discipline that made this possible was legilimency. Unlike charms that influence emotion or spells that extract surface thoughts, legilimency is concerned with perception rather than control. It allows the practitioner to observe patterns of thought, emotional associations, and instinctive responses without necessarily altering them. In the context of the sorting hat, this capability was essential. The founders required a means of understanding students that extended beyond rehearsed answers or performative behavior. By embedding legilimency into the hat's enchantment, the founders ensured that sorting would be based on internal disposition rather than outward presentation. Children arriving at Hogwarts often carried expectations shaped by family stories and cultural reputation. Some attempted to emulate traits they believed would secure placement in a particular house. Others downplayed aspects of themselves they feared might be judged unfavourably. Legilimency allowed the hat to look past these layers of self-presentation and assess underlying motivation and capacity. Importantly, the hat's use of legilimency appears to have been deliberately constrained. There is no evidence that it accessed memories indiscriminately or probed areas of the mind unrelated to its function. Its evaluation focused on qualities relevant to education and development, such as resilience, curiosity, ambition, and ethical orientation. This restraint reflects the founder's awareness of the ethical risks associated with invasive magic, particularly when applied to children. The distinction between perception and intrusion is critical to understanding the sorting hat's legitimacy. Had the hat been designed to extract detailed memories or exert influence over decision-making, it would likely have provoked resistance from both students and faculty. Instead, its enchantment was calibrated to inform judgment without overriding agency. Students retained the capacity to express preference and to engage in dialogue with the hat, reinforcing the sense that sorting was a collaborative rather than coercive process. This balance also explains why the sorting hat's judgments could evolve over time. Because legilimency reveals patterns rather than fixed data, the hat's interpretations were shaped by accumulated experience. As successive generations demonstrated new ways of expressing courage, loyalty, or ambition, the hat's evaluative framework expanded accordingly. This learning process did not require re-enchantment. It was an inherent feature of the system's design. In this way, legilimency functioned as both a technical solution and a philosophical statement. It affirmed the founder's belief that understanding should precede categorization, and that education begins with listening rather than labeling. The sorting hat's enduring effectiveness is inseparable from this choice, which allowed it to remain sensitive to individual complexity while maintaining institutional coherence. Canonical sources confirm that it employs legilimency, allowing it to examine a student's mind, emotional responses, and intentions. This evaluation is neither superficial nor mechanical. The hat considers not only who a student is at the moment of sorting, but who they might become under the right conditions. It also accounts for choice, reflecting the founder's belief that agency and environment together shape character. By transforming this process into a ritual, the founders ensured that governance would feel like tradition rather than surveillance. The public ceremony of sorting served multiple purposes simultaneously. It normalized the act of evaluation by embedding it within celebration. It distributed authority away from individual faculty members, and it framed placement as a shared experience rather than a private judgment. Students were not assessed in isolation. They were welcomed into a community that witnessed and affirmed the transition. In the earliest years, these ceremonies were modest and pragmatic. The hall was smaller, the student body limited, and the atmosphere more cautious than celebratory. Many students arrived with little understanding of what sorting entailed, having grown up in environments where magic itself was hidden or feared. For them, the ceremony marked the first time their abilities were acknowledged openly, rather than concealed. This shift carried emotional weight, transforming anxiety into relief for some, and apprehension into curiosity for others. As Hogwarts expanded, the ritual acquired greater formality. Songs, speeches, and repeated customs created continuity across generations. This repetition served an important psychological function. By encountering the same ceremony experienced by those who came before them, students were situated within a lineage that extended beyond their own family history. The sorting hat, placed at the centre of this ritual, became a focal point through which institutional memory was transmitted. The normalisation of sorting through ceremony also mitigated potential resentment. Decisions delivered privately invite comparison and suspicion. Decisions delivered publicly within a shared framework are more easily accepted as legitimate. Even when students felt uncertainty or disappointment, the surrounding ritual emphasised belonging over exclusion. The act of sitting beneath the hat became a moment of collective vulnerability rather than individual scrutiny. Over time, the ceremony's predictability fostered trust. Students came to view sorting not as a test to be passed, but as a passage to be undergone. This distinction mattered. A test implies judgment of worth. A passage implies transition. By framing sorting as the latter, Hogwarts reinforced the idea that placement was the beginning of education rather than its verdict. This ritualization also protected the sorting hat itself. By embedding its function within tradition, the founders reduced the likelihood that its judgments would be challenged on procedural grounds. The hat did not operate behind closed doors or through opaque criteria. It performed its task in full view of the community, its authority reinforced through repetition rather than enforcement. In this way, ceremony became a stabilizing mechanism, ensuring that the sorting hat's role remained accepted even as individual decisions provoked debate. Each student passed through the same moment of vulnerability and belonging, establishing identity within community from the very beginning. Over time, the ceremony became a rite of passage, its familiarity masking the extraordinary responsibility it carried. The sorting hat was built to outlast its creators, and this intention shaped not only its enchantment, but its position within Hogwarts' institutional hierarchy. Unlike offices that could be reassigned, or traditions that could be altered by decree, the hat occupied a liminal role. Neither administrator nor instructor, but an arbiter whose authority derived from continuity rather than command. This placement insulated it from many of the political pressures that later affected other aspects of the school's governance. As headmasters and teaching staffs changed over the centuries, the sorting hat remained constant. Its judgments were not subject to review or appeal, not because it was infallible, but because its function was foundational. To challenge the hat's authority was to challenge the structure of the house system itself. This design choice minimized the risk that short-term priorities or ideological fashions would distort placement decisions. The endurance of the sorting hat's authority also depended on restraint. The hat did not involve itself in discipline, curriculum, or policy. It spoke publicly only during the sorting ceremony and on occasion through its songs. By limiting its scope, the enchantment avoided the accumulation of power that might otherwise have provoked resistance. Authority exercised sparingly is often authority maintained. This restraint reinforced the founders' original intent. The sorting hat was meant to guide entry into Hogwarts, not to govern life within it. Once students were placed, responsibility shifted to educators, peers, and the students themselves. The hat's silence for the remainder of the year underscored the idea that development was a process, not a verdict delivered in a single moment. Over time, this pattern helped normalize disagreement with outcomes without undermining the system. Students could question their fit within a house, explore interests beyond its reputation, and even defy expectations, all without reopening the sorting decision itself. The structure allowed for growth precisely because it did not attempt to enforce conformity after placement. In institutional terms, the sorting hat functioned as a gatekeeper rather than a regulator. It determined initial conditions, not final states. This distinction is essential to understanding why the house system did not collapse under the weight of its own symbolism. By decoupling entry from enforcement, Hogwarts preserved flexibility within a stable framework. This architectural approach to authority reflects a sophisticated understanding of educational design. Systems that attempt to control outcomes directly often generate resistance and stagnation. Systems that establish supportive contexts and then withdraw allow complexity to unfold. The sorting hat's enduring relevance is inseparable from this insight, which remains applicable well beyond the magical world. It would bear the weight of their unresolved disagreements and adapt as the magical world changed. Its existence reveals something essential about the founders themselves. They did not trust rules alone. They trusted discernment, and they trusted future generations enough to give them a voice in deciding who they would become. This is the foundation upon which the sorting hat's long history rests, not merely as an enchanted object, but as an institutional solution designed to balance structure and freedom, unity and difference, continuity and change. To fully appreciate the sorting hat's uniqueness, it is useful to compare it with other forms of enchanted objects that appear throughout magical history. The wizarding world is replete with artifacts that speak, respond, record, or react. Yet very few exhibit the combination of evaluative judgment, adaptive reasoning, and ethical restraint that defines the sorting hat. Understanding these distinctions clarifies why the hat occupies such a singular position within Hogwarts. Magical portraits provide the most commonly cited point of comparison. These portraits can converse, offer advice, and even display temperament and preference. However, portraits are not minds in motion. They are imprints created by capturing aspects of a subject's personality, memories, and mannerisms at a specific point in time. Once completed, a portrait does not grow in understanding. It can refine its expression through experience, but it cannot revise its underlying worldview. Its judgments remain anchored to the moment of its creation. The sorting hat differs fundamentally in this respect. It was not modelled after a single consciousness, nor frozen at a single historical perspective. Instead, it was endowed with a framework for judgment capable of incorporating new information. Its understanding of courage, ambition, intelligence, and loyalty evolved as those qualities were expressed differently across centuries. This capacity for reinterpretation, rather than replication, is what allows the hat to remain relevant. Enchanted books offer another instructive comparison. Some magical texts respond to readers, revealing information selectively or reacting to inquiry. These objects simulate interaction, but their responses are constrained by predefined pathways. They can reveal or conceal content, but they do not weigh ethical consequence or long-term development. Their intelligence, such as it is, serves access rather than evaluation. Maps and tracking artifacts introduce a further layer of complexity. Objects such as enchanted maps can monitor movement, recognize individuals, and display situational awareness. These capabilities suggest a form of perception, yet they remain functionally descriptive rather than interpretive. A map can show where someone is. It cannot assess who they are becoming or what environment will best support their growth. The sorting hat integrates aspects of all these forms while transcending their limitations. Like portraits, it communicates. Like responsive texts, it engages dynamically. Like perceptive artifacts, it gathers information. What distinguishes it is synthesis. The hat does not merely record or reveal, it evaluates. It does not respond to a single stimulus, it balances multiple considerations simultaneously. This synthesis required careful magical architecture. The founders did not attempt to replicate human consciousness, which would have raised ethical and practical concerns beyond their capacity to resolve. Instead, they constructed a bounded evaluative system oriented toward a specific purpose. The hat does not desire, strategize, or act independently. It judges, and then it withdraws. This limitation is essential. By constraining the hat's function to entry rather than governance, the founders avoided creating an artifact that might accumulate influence over time. The sorting hat's intelligence is therefore not a general faculty, but a specialized one, tuned to questions of placement and development rather than authority or control. In this sense, the sorting hat represents one of the wizarding world's most sophisticated achievements in ethical enchantment. It demonstrates an awareness of power's dangers alongside its possibilities. By embedding judgment without autonomy, perception without intrusion, and continuity without stagnation, the founders created an object capable of serving an institution across centuries without dominating it. From this beginning, its role would deepen, its judgments would shape lives, and its influence would extend far beyond the moment when a child first sat beneath it. In the earliest decades of Hogwarts' operation, the sorting hat's function was still closely observed by its creators. Although the founders had embedded their collective reasoning into the enchantment, they did not appear to have treated the hat as an unquestionable authority so much as a designed mechanism whose outcomes had to be tested in practice. Each placement helped define the school's evolving culture, and each cohort provided evidence of whether the houses, as educational environments, produced the kind of learning and character development the founders had intended. During this initial period, sorting was less ceremonial than it would later become, and more directly connected to mentorship and oversight. The founders and early instructors paid attention to what happened after placement, because the point of sorting was never classification for its own sake. It was the creation of stable contexts for growth. When a student struggled, the assumption was not immediately that the sorting hat had erred, but that the student's development might require different forms of support, or that the house environment had not yet matured into the balanced community it would later become. As student numbers increased and as the founders' day-to-day involvement inevitably declined, the hat's autonomy became more significant. The transition to fully independent sorting was gradual, unfolding over time as confidence in its judgment solidified. The consistency of outcomes reinforced trust, and patterns began to emerge that aligned broadly with the founders' original ideals. In this way, the sorting hat did not merely reflect Hogwarts culture, it actively helped create it, shaping the lived reality of the houses through repeated decisions that turned theoretical values into daily practice. As the sorting hat assumed greater responsibility for student placement, its decisions began to influence Hogwarts in ways that extended beyond individual outcomes. Over time, The accumulation of these decisions contributed to the stabilization of the house system itself. What had begun as a flexible educational framework gradually solidified into a defining feature of Hogwarts culture. Students arrived already aware of the reputations associated with each house, and those reputations in turn shaped expectations, behaviour, and aspiration. This process was not without tension. The founders had been aware from the beginning that any system designed to categorise students risked oversimplification. Human character, particularly at a young age, is neither static nor easily reduced to a single dominant trait. The sorting hat was therefore enchanted to weigh multiple dimensions of personality, aptitude, and disposition, rather than relying on rigid criteria. Its deliberations reflected an understanding that courage could coexist with doubt, that ambition could exist alongside loyalty, and that curiosity could be tempered by caution. Nevertheless, as the houses developed distinct identities over successive generations, social pressure began to play a greater role in shaping student experience. A student sorted into a particular house entered not only an educational environment, but a living tradition shaped by the choices and achievements of those who had come before. This inheritance could be empowering, providing role models and a sense of continuity, but it could also be constraining. Expectations, once established, have a tendency to perpetuate themselves. The sorting hat's continued effectiveness depended on its ability to resist this inertia. Its task was not to reinforce stereotypes, but to identify where a student's potential was most likely to be cultivated responsibly. Canonical accounts suggest that the hat remained attentive to this distinction, occasionally hesitating when a student displayed strong alignment with more than one house. These moments of prolonged deliberation, later referred to as hat stalls, were not errors or malfunctions, but evidence of the enchantment operating as intended. They reflected the complexity of the decision-making process rather than its failure. The existence of hat stalls also highlights a critical aspect of the sorting hat's design, its capacity for judgment rather than mere classification. In such cases, the hat weighed competing possibilities, assessing not only present traits but likely trajectories of growth. This evaluative process underscores the founders' original intent. The house system was meant to guide development, not to confine it, and the sorting hat functioned as the mechanism through which that guidance was personalised. As centuries passed, the sorting hat's role became increasingly ritualised, and with ritual came narrative. The houses accumulated reputations shaped not only by the qualities they were meant to cultivate, but by the visible successes and failures of their members. Over time, these reputations hardened into expectations, and expectations began to influence behaviour. This feedback loop between perception and conduct became one of the most subtle forces shaping life at Hogwarts. Students did not enter the house system as blank slates. By the time they arrived, many had already absorbed stories about what each house represented. Families spoke of bravery, ambition, cleverness, and loyalty, as if these qualities existed in isolation rather than in combination. Such narratives simplified a complex educational framework into recognizable archetypes. While this simplification made the system easier to understand, it also risked narrowing how students interpreted their own potential. Within the houses, reputation functioned as both guide and constraint. Students were encouraged, implicitly and explicitly, to embody traits associated with their house. Acts that aligned with reputation were praised and remembered. Those that deviated were often overlooked or explained away. Over generations, this selective reinforcement amplified particular behaviours, making houses appear more homogeneous than they truly were. The sorting hat operated within this evolving cultural context, yet it was not governed by it. Its evaluations continued to focus on internal disposition rather than external expectation. However, the environment into which it placed students was increasingly shaped by accumulated myth. This tension between judgment and reception underscores the importance of understanding the house system as dynamic rather than static. Educators played a critical role in mediating this dynamic. Heads of house, in particular, bore responsibility for ensuring that reputation did not ossify into doctrine. Effective leadership emphasized the diversity of expression within each house, highlighting examples that complicated rather than confirmed stereotypes. When this balance was maintained, the house system functioned as intended, a supportive context rather than a prescriptive mould. Periods in which this balance faltered revealed the fragility of institutional culture. When reputation hardened into expectation, students who did not conform experienced alienation rather than growth. These moments prompted internal reflection within Hogwarts, reinforcing the need to continually reinterpret foundational values rather than treat them as immutable. The sorting hat's continued reliance on internal evaluation provided a counterweight to these pressures. By placing students according to potential rather than reputation, it periodically reintroduced diversity into each house, preventing complete homogenization. This function, though subtle, was essential to the system's long-term resilience. Through this ongoing interaction between judgment and culture, the sorting hat helped sustain a balance between continuity and change. The houses remained recognizable without becoming static, and identity remained meaningful without becoming determinative. This equilibrium, maintained across centuries, represents one of the most understated achievements of Hogwarts institutional design. What began as a practical solution to an administrative problem evolved into one of Hogwarts' most enduring traditions. The public nature of the sorting ceremony reinforced communal identity, while the repetition of the ritual across generations lent it a sense of permanence. Students and faculty alike came to regard the sorting hat as an authority not simply because of its enchantment, but because of the continuity it represented. At the same time, the hat's annual song served as a subtle reminder of its origins and purpose. These songs, often treated by students as eccentric or ceremonial, functioned as a form of institutional memory. Through them, the sorting hat reiterated the values upon which Hogwarts was founded, and at times offered commentary on the state of the school and the wider magical world. This capacity to reflect contemporary concerns suggests that the hat's enchantment allowed for adaptation and contextual awareness rather than static repetition. The question of whether the sorting hat possesses true consciousness has been a subject of debate within the wizarding community, particularly as understandings of magical cognition have evolved over time. This debate is not merely academic. It reflects broader concerns about the ethical limits of enchantment and the distinction between tools that assist human judgment and constructs that replicate it. Arguments in favour of attributing a form of consciousness to the sorting hat often point to its capacity for speech, memory, and apparent reflection. The hat recalls past sortings, comments on historical change, and adapts its language to contemporary contexts. These behaviours suggest more than mechanical response. However, such interpretations risk conflating complexity with autonomy. The presence of sophisticated behaviour does not necessarily imply independent agency. A more precise understanding situates the sorting hat within the category of bounded cognitive enchantments. Unlike human consciousness, which generates goals, desires, and self-directed action, the hat's awareness is constrained by purpose. It does not seek outcomes beyond those defined at its creation. Its reasoning operates within a closed loop: receive information, evaluate according to embedded values, deliver placement, and disengage. This limitation is not a flaw but a safeguard. By restricting the scope of the hat's awareness, the founders avoided creating an entity that might accumulate influence beyond its intended role. The hat cannot reinterpret its purpose, expand its authority, or intervene in matters outside sorting. Its intelligence serves function, not selfhood. The distinction becomes clearer when contrasted with magical beings capable of growth independent of design. Portraits, while limited, can form preferences and develop conversational nuance. Living magical creatures exhibit learning and adaptation unconstrained by predefined purpose. The sorting hat occupies a different category entirely, one in which adaptability is permitted only insofar as it serves judgment rather than autonomy. This ethical architecture reflects the founders' caution. They sought to preserve discernment without surrendering control over the institution's moral centre. By embedding evaluation rather than volition, they created a mechanism that could assist education without supplanting it. Over centuries, this design choice proved prescient. As debates about magical ethics intensified, particularly during periods of political upheaval, the sorting hat remained insulated from controversies surrounding sentient enchantments. Its legitimacy endured because it did not blur the boundary between tool and being. Students interacted with it briefly, respectfully, and without expectation of relationship. Understanding the sorting hat as a bounded cognitive construct clarifies its enduring role. It is neither alive nor inert, neither ruler nor servant. It is an instrument of judgment designed to operate quietly at the threshold of belonging and then step aside. This restrained conception of intelligence aligns with the founders' broader educational philosophy. Hogwarts was never intended to replace human moral development with magical certainty. The sorting hat initiates a process. It does not complete it. By refusing to claim final authority, it preserves space for growth, disagreement, and change within the structure it supports. While it speaks, reasons, and remembers, it does not exhibit autonomy in the way a human mind does. It does not form independent goals or pursue self-directed action. Instead, it operates within carefully defined parameters, its awareness constrained by the purpose for which it was created. In this sense, the sorting hat occupies a liminal space between object and mind, animated by intelligence but bound by design. This distinction becomes particularly important when considering the influence of Salazar Slytherin. It is an established fact that Slytherin's views on blood purity eventually brought him into conflict with the other founders, leading to his departure from Hogwarts. What is less immediately visible, but no less significant, is the extent to which his values remained embedded within the sorting hat after he left. Because the hat was enchanted collaboratively, it carried aspects of his philosophy alongside those of the other founders. In the earlier centuries of Hogwarts history, this influence likely manifested more overtly. Slytherin's emphasis on lineage and preservation would have shaped early sorting decisions, particularly at a time when the magical community itself was still deeply cautious about exposure. However, the Sorting Hat's adaptive capacity appears to have mitigated this influence over time. Canonical evidence indicates that Slytherin House eventually came to include students of diverse backgrounds, suggesting that the hat recalibrated its judgments in response to changing social realities. This evolution illustrates one of the Sorting Hat's most remarkable features, its ability to reinterpret foundational values without discarding them entirely. Ambition and resourcefulness remained central to Slytherin House, but rigid exclusion based on birth did not persist as an absolute criterion. This shift was not the result of re-enchantment or external modification, but of the hat's built-in capacity to learn from outcomes and context. The endurance of this mechanism speaks to the foresight of the founders, even in their disagreement. By embedding multiple perspectives into a single system, they ensured that no one philosophy could dominate unchallenged across centuries. The Sorting Hat became, in effect, a site of ongoing negotiation between competing values, resolving those tensions anew with each generation of students. As Hogwarts continued to evolve, the Sorting Hat remained a constant presence, its judgment shaping not only individual lives but the broader culture of the school. Its origins as a governance solution never disappeared entirely, even as tradition softened its edges. Beneath the ceremony and song, the hat continued to perform the same essential task it had been designed for, placing young witches and wizards into environments where they could learn, grow, and assume responsibility for the power they possessed. Despite the apparent stability that emerged as the house system matured, the Sorting Hat's history was never one of unbroken consensus. As Hogwarts expanded and its student body diversified, tensions arose that tested both the limits of the hat's judgment and the assumptions underlying the system it served. These tensions did not always manifest dramatically. More often, they appeared in quieter forms: students who felt misplaced, faculty who questioned particular decisions, and subtle patterns that suggested the relationship between house identity and individual development was more complex than originally anticipated. In the school's early centuries, such concerns were addressed informally. Professors monitored student progress closely, and heads of house played an active role in guiding those who struggled to adapt. The prevailing belief was that environment could compensate for uncertainty. A student who appeared ill-suited to a particular house might, with time and mentorship, grow into the values emphasized there. This belief reflected the founders' conviction that character was shaped through experience rather than predetermined at birth. Nevertheless, not every placement resulted in immediate harmony. Historical accounts preserved in Hogwarts records describe students who resisted their sorting, either openly or through withdrawal. These cases prompted reflection among the faculty, not because they undermined the Sorting Hat's authority, but because they highlighted the emotional weight carried by the decision. Being sorted was not merely an administrative act, it was a declaration of belonging that influenced friendships, rivalries, and self-perception. The Sorting Hat's response to such cases appears to have been cautious rather than reactive. There is no evidence that the hat was altered or recalibrated in response to individual dissatisfaction. Instead, its enchantments continued to operate as designed, weighing internal disposition and expressed preference while remaining oriented toward long-term development. This restraint suggests that the founders anticipated disagreement and chose consistency over constant adjustment. Over time, patterns of success and failure informed broader cultural understanding of the houses. Certain traits came to be celebrated more visibly than others, and this emphasis occasionally distorted perception. Courage was praised, but recklessness was sometimes mistaken for bravery. Ambition was admired, but caution was misread as weakness. These interpretive shifts did not originate with the sorting hat itself, but with the human tendency to simplify complex ideals into easily recognizable markers. The Sorting Hat songs occasionally address these distortions, reminding the school community that no single house embodied virtue in isolation. These moments of commentary were subtle but significant. They reaffirmed the founders' original intent that the houses function together rather than compete for moral superiority. Through these reminders, the hat acted not only as a sorting mechanism, but as a custodian of institutional balance. As Hogwarts endured periods of external pressure and internal change, the sorting hat's role became increasingly symbolic. Yet its symbolic status did not diminish its practical importance. Each year, new students arrived shaped by cultural expectations that had grown around the houses. The hat's task was therefore complicated by the need to look beyond reputation and assess individuals on their own terms. This challenge underscored the importance of its legitimacy-based evaluation, which allowed it to engage directly with a student's inner landscape rather than relying on surface behaviour. The persistence of this method over centuries suggests that the sorting hat's design succeeded in insulating it from many of the biases that affected human judgment. While no system can claim perfect neutrality, the hat's consistent emphasis on potential rather than performance distinguished it from more rigid classificatory frameworks. This distinction helped preserve the house system's educational function even as its social meaning evolved. By the time Hogwarts had firmly established itself as the central institution of magical education in Britain, the sorting hat had become inseparable from the school's identity. Its continued presence provided continuity in a world that was otherwise marked by change. Ministries rose and fell, laws shifted, and social norms evolved, but the ritual of sorting remained. In this constancy, the hat offered reassurance that some aspects of magical life endured beyond political or cultural fluctuation. Yet constancy did not mean stagnation. The sorting hat's judgments continue to reflect contemporary realities, adjusting to new forms of ambition, new expressions of courage, and new understandings of intellect and loyalty. This adaptability allowed it to remain relevant without abandoning its foundational purpose. It remained, at its core, a mechanism designed to guide young witches and wizards toward environments where they could learn not only magic, but responsibility. The long-term success of this system can be measured not in the absence of conflict, but in the school's ability to absorb and respond to it. Misalignments prompted dialogue rather than collapse. Disagreements led to reflection rather than abandonment. Through it all, the sorting hat continued to perform its task quietly, its origins as a practical solution to a medieval problem gradually transforming into a defining feature of one of the wizarding world's most enduring institutions. As the founders' disagreements intensified, the sorting hat found itself positioned at the intersection of philosophy and consequence. The conflict between Salazar Slytherin and the other founders did not erupt suddenly, nor was it confined to a single policy dispute. It emerged gradually, shaped by differing assessments of risk, responsibility, and trust. While all four founders shared the goal of protecting the magical world, they diverged sharply in their understanding of how that protection should be achieved. Slytherin's concerns centered on exposure and misuse. He believed that teaching magic to those without magical ancestry increased the likelihood of secrecy breaches and cultural misunderstanding. In his view, magical families possessed not only inherited ability, but inherited restraint, a generational familiarity with concealment that could not be replicated through instruction alone. This belief was not entirely uncommon in early magical society, where secrecy had long been maintained through isolation rather than integration. The other founders rejected this reasoning. Helga Hufflepuff argued that magical ability itself, not lineage, determined who deserved education and guidance. To deny instruction to capable children based on birth, she believed, would deepen inequality and perpetuate fear. Rowena Ravenclaw challenged the assumption that heritage ensured responsibility, emphasizing that understanding could be taught and that ignorance posed a greater danger than openness. Godric Gryffindor framed the disagreement in moral terms, asserting that courage required trust in individuals rather than retreat into exclusion. These differences strained the founders' collaboration, and while Hogwarts continued to function, trust among its creators eroded. Decisions that had once been made collectively became contentious. The Sorting Hat, already operating independently, continued to apply the blended judgment encoded within it, but the harmony that had produced that judgment was fracturing. Slytherin's eventual departure from Hogwarts marked a critical turning point in the school's early history. His exit did not dismantle the institution, nor did it invalidate the systems already in place. However, it left unresolved tensions embedded within Hogwarts' foundations. The Sorting Hat, having been enchanted collaboratively, retained elements of Slytherin's philosophy alongside those of the remaining founders. This persistence was not an oversight, but a consequence of the decision to encode multiple perspectives into a single, enduring mechanism. In the immediate aftermath of Slytherin's departure, the Sorting Hat continued to sort students according to the values it had been given. Early records suggest that Slytherin House remained closely aligned with ideals of ambition, resourcefulness, and strategic thinking. At the same time, concerns about lineage appear to have carried greater weight during this period than they would in later centuries. This influence reflects the social context of the time, rather than an immutable rule within the Hat's enchantment. Over subsequent generations, however, the Sorting Hat's adaptive capacity became increasingly evident. As wizarding society evolved, and as Muggle-born witches and wizards demonstrated competence, discretion, and loyalty to the magical world, the Hat's judgment shifted accordingly. The inclusion of students from diverse backgrounds within Slytherin House indicates that the Hat recalibrated its evaluation criteria in response to lived outcomes rather than rigid ideology. This evolution underscores a defining feature of the Sorting Hat's design, its ability to reconcile foundational values with changing realities. Ambition and preservation remained central to Slytherin House, but they were no longer interpreted through a strictly exclusionary lens. The Hat did not abandon Slytherin's emphasis on control and foresight. Instead, it reframed those qualities within a broader understanding of responsibility and merit. The Sorting Hat's role during this period illustrates how Hogwarts managed ideological conflict without institutional collapse. By embedding disagreement into a system capable of ongoing interpretation, the founders inadvertently created a mechanism that could outlast their own consensus. The Hat became a mediator of legacy, balancing competing philosophies in real time as each new generation arrived. As the founders themselves passed into history, their disagreements softened into legend. Stories emphasized unity over conflict, simplifying the school's origins for the sake of cohesion. Yet the Sorting Hat preserved a more complex truth. Through its decisions and its songs, it continued to reflect the tension between inclusion and caution, between trust and control that had shaped Hogwarts from its earliest days. This capacity to carry unresolved questions forward, rather than resolve them definitively, proved essential to Hogwarts' endurance. The magical world did not stand still, and neither could the institution that educated its future members. The Sorting Hat remained, quietly performing the task it had been given, its judgments shaped by the past but responsive to the present, ensuring that the school's foundational values remained active rather than static. The contrast between Salazar Slytherin's final actions and the continued operation of the Sorting Hat reveals an important distinction in how conflict was expressed within Hogwarts' foundations. Where the Chamber of Secrets represented a hidden, rigid response to ideological disagreement, the Sorting Hat embodied a more flexible and enduring approach. Both were products of the same era and the same founder, yet they reflected fundamentally different attitudes toward change, authority, and the future. The Chamber of Secrets was designed to preserve a single interpretation of Slytherin's beliefs, sealed away and waiting for a specific set of conditions to be met. Its purpose was fixed. It did not adapt, reconsider, or respond to outcomes. In contrast, the Sorting Hat was explicitly constructed to operate in dialogue with experience. Its judgments evolved as the world around it changed, absorbing evidence rather than resisting it. This difference explains why one became a source of crisis centuries later, while the other remained a stabilizing force within the school. As Hogwarts moved further from its founding era, the Sorting Hat increasingly carried the weight of institutional memory. The founders' direct influence faded, replaced by stories, songs, and simplified narratives that emphasized unity and continuity. The Hat's annual songs, though often treated lightly by students, served as one of the few mechanisms through which the school's deeper history was periodically revisited. These songs reminded each new generation that the house system was born from cooperation as well as conflict, and that its purpose was collective rather than competitive. During periods of relative stability, this function was subtle. The Hat reiterated values already embedded in daily school life, reinforcing cooperation and mutual respect. However, during moments of heightened tension within the magical world, its commentary became more pointed. Canonical examples from later centuries demonstrate that the Sorting Hat was capable of issuing warnings when it perceived division within Hogwarts that echoed the fractures of its own origin. These moments suggest that the Hat's enchantment allowed it not only to assess individuals, but to sense broader patterns within the community it served. This capacity raises important questions about the scope of the Sorting Hat's awareness. While it does not possess independent agency, its ability to comment meaningfully on the state of the school implies access to collective sentiment as well as individual minds. This does not indicate consciousness, in the human sense, but rather a carefully bounded form of perception tied to its function. The hat was designed to serve Hogwarts as a whole, and its awareness appears calibrated accordingly. As centuries passed, the ritual of sorting became one of the most emotionally significant moments in a young witch or wizard's life. By the time students arrived at Hogwarts, the houses had accumulated generations of stories and reputations. The sorting hat's task therefore involved disentangling personal identity from inherited expectation. It had to look beyond what students believed about themselves, or what they'd been told about their prospective houses, and assess where they would most likely develop the judgment and responsibility required of adult witches and wizards. This challenge became increasingly complex as wizarding society itself diversified. Changes in family structure, education before Hogwarts, and attitudes toward authority all shaped how students presented themselves at the moment of sorting. The hat's continued reliance on internal disposition rather than external performance allowed it to navigate these shifts without abandoning its foundational purpose. In doing so, it preserved the house system's relevance even as its social meaning evolved. The long-term effect of this adaptability can be seen in the enduring centrality of the sorting hat to Hogwarts' identity. While other traditions changed or fell away, the sorting ceremony remained. Its persistence was not due to nostalgia alone, but to its ongoing utility. By placing students into supportive environments from the outset, the hat continued to perform a function that no administrative alternative could replicate without losing nuance. In this way, the sorting hat came to represent a rare continuity between Hogwarts' medieval origins and its modern incarnation. It linked generations through a shared experience that was at once deeply personal and collectively meaningful. Each student's encounter with the hat was unique, yet part of a ritual that stretched back to the school's founding. The origins of the sorting hat, therefore, cannot be understood solely as a moment of magical invention. They must be understood as part of a broader institutional response to instability, fear, and disagreement. The hat was created not because the founders agreed on everything, but because they recognized that disagreement itself required structure. By embedding multiple perspectives into a single, enduring mechanism, they ensured that Hogwarts could continue to negotiate its values long after their voices had fallen silent. As the school moved forward into later centuries, facing new challenges and transformations, the sorting hat remained at the threshold, greeting each new generation with the same quiet task it had always performed. Its presence at the moment of entry carried psychological weight that extended well beyond ceremony, shaping how students understood belonging, expectation, and self-concept from the very beginning of their formal magical education. For many students, sorting represented the first time an external authority articulated an assessment of who they might become. Prior to Hogwarts, magical identity was often defined reactively, shaped by accidental magic, family anxiety, or secrecy. Sorting reframed that identity proactively. It situated students within a community that affirmed certain qualities as valuable, offering a language through which they could interpret their own tendencies and aspirations. This process carried both benefit and risk. On the one hand, early belonging provided stability at a moment of upheaval. Students left familiar environments and entered an institution whose scale and complexity could be overwhelming. House placement offered immediate social anchoring, reducing isolation and fostering peer support. On the other hand, the assignment of identity at such an early stage risked narrowing self-perception if not carefully contextualized. Hogwarts' educational culture evolved in response to this tension. Faculty increasingly emphasized that house identity described emphasis rather than essence. Students were encouraged to explore interests beyond their house's reputation and to view the qualities associated with other houses as complementary rather than contradictory. This pedagogical framing did not diminish the significance of sorting, but it tempered its interpretive weight. Longitudinal observation of student development supported this approach. Records indicate that many witches and wizards demonstrated significant shifts in confidence, curiosity, and ethical reasoning over the course of their education. These changes reinforced the understanding that sorting established initial conditions rather than fixed trajectories. The sorting hat's role, therefore, was not to define students conclusively, but to place them in environments where growth could occur responsibly. This understanding also shaped how students reflected on their sorting later in life. Alumni accounts frequently reinterpret house placement through the lens of experience, recognizing ways in which their environment challenged as well as affirmed their tendencies. Such reflections underscore the founder's original insight. Education is most effective when it provides context for development rather than certainty about outcome. By maintaining this balance between identity and openness, Hogwarts preserved the psychological utility of sorting without allowing it to become determinative. The sorting hat's continued presence at the school's threshold thus functioned not only as a gateway to institutional belonging, but as a reminder that identity, once named, must still be lived, questioned, and revised. It listened, it weighed, and it decided, carrying forward a legacy shaped as much by adaptation as by tradition. Among the most revealing aspects of the sorting hat's long operation are the cases in which its decisions were contested, delayed, or later questioned. These instances, often reduced in popular retelling to moments of drama or novelty, are better understood as structural stress tests that illuminate how the system functions under conditions of ambiguity. They reveal not failure, but intentional design. Hat stalls, the term later used to describe prolonged deliberation during sorting, were never common, but they were significant. Canonical accounts suggest that such cases arose when a student's disposition presented multiple viable developmental pathways. In these moments, the sorting hat was required to do precisely what it had been designed to do: weigh not just traits, but consequences. The delay was not hesitation born of confusion, but deliberation born of responsibility. In a hat stall, the hat evaluated competing environments rather than competing labels. It considered how a student's courage might be shaped differently by challenge than by affirmation, or how ambition might be refined through restraint rather than encouragement. This evaluative process underscores the founder's insistence that education is directional rather than declarative. Sorting was not a pronouncement of identity, but a hypothesis about growth. The existence of hat stalls also reveals an important truth about the sorting hat's relationship to time. Because it evaluates potential rather than outcome, it cannot rely on certainty. It must operate within probabilities informed by precedent but open to deviation. This probabilistic reasoning distinguishes it sharply from systems designed to categorize based on static characteristics. Over centuries, these rare cases accumulated into a body of informal institutional knowledge. faculty came to understand that prolonged deliberation signaled not indecision, but complexity. Students learned, sometimes only in retrospect, that the hat's pause reflected the seriousness with which it approached their placement. In this way, hat stalls reinforced trust in the system rather than undermining it. The broader cultural narrative that emerged around these moments often obscured their instructional value. Stories focused on famous individuals whose sortings were delayed, framing the event as foreshadowing greatness or inner conflict. While compelling, this interpretation risks distorting the purpose of sorting itself. The sorting hat does not predict destiny. It establishes context. The significance of a hat stall lies not in what the student will become, but in the range of environments in which they might responsibly grow. This distinction becomes clearer when considering cases in which students later appeared to defy their house's reputation. Such outcomes are sometimes cited as evidence of sorting error. In fact, they illustrate the system's flexibility. A student who develops qualities associated with other houses is not evidence of misplacement, but of engagement. The house system was designed to cultivate, not constrain. By examining contested and complex sortings through this lens, the sorting hat emerges not as an oracle, but as a facilitator. Its authority rests not on infallibility, but on transparency of purpose. It does not claim certainty where none exists. Instead, it offers a reasoned starting point, trusting education itself to do the rest. These moments, while relatively rare, offer critical insight into how the hat interprets character and potential, and how it balances inherent disposition against conscious choice. Rather than undermining the legitimacy of the sorting process, such cases illuminate the complexity the founders deliberately built into the system. The phenomenon later termed a hat stall provides the clearest example of this complexity. In these instances, the sorting hat hesitated for an extended period, weighing competing possibilities before reaching a decision. Canonical records indicate that hat stalls occurred when a student exhibited strong alignment with more than one house, or when expressed preference conflicted meaningfully with observed traits. The duration of hesitation varied, but the significance lay not in the delay itself, but in the nature of the deliberation taking place. Hat stalls demonstrate that the sorting hat does not operate on a hierarchy of traits, nor does it seek to resolve ambiguity by defaulting to the most conspicuous quality. Instead, it evaluates the educational consequences of placement. The question guiding its judgment is not simply which house best reflects a student's present identity, but which environment is most likely to cultivate sound judgment, ethical responsibility, and sustainable growth. This forward-looking emphasis aligns closely with the founders' original educational philosophy. Some of the most frequently discussed hat stalls in Hogwarts history involve students who later became central figures within the magical world. These cases are often cited in retrospect as evidence either for or against the sorting hat's accuracy. Such interpretations, however, risk oversimplifying the relationship between sorting and outcome. The founders did not design the system to predict future achievement or moral certainty. They designed it to provide context. Success or failure emerged from how individuals engaged with that context over time. The tension between choice and disposition is particularly evident in cases where students voiced strong preferences during sorting. Canonical accounts confirm that the sorting hat considers such preferences seriously, but not uncritically. A stated desire to join a particular house is weighed alongside internal motivation and capacity. This balance reflects an understanding that choice itself can be a meaningful indicator of values, but that it must be assessed within a broader psychological framework. Importantly, the sorting hat's willingness to honour choice does not indicate abdication of responsibility. Rather, it reflects a belief that agency plays a role in character formation. A student who consciously seeks an environment that challenges their fears or tempers their excesses may benefit more from that placement than from one that merely affirms existing tendencies. The hat's role in these cases is to determine whether the expressed choice aligns with genuine potential for growth rather than avoidance or self-deception. Over centuries, these nuanced decisions contributed to a growing recognition within Hogwarts that house identity was neither destiny nor limitation. Students sorted into one house routinely displayed qualities associated with others, and this plurality was not treated as failure of the system, but as evidence of its flexibility. The sorting hat did not expect conformity, it expected engagement. Nevertheless, the accumulation of famous examples gradually shaped popular understanding of the sorting process. Stories of exceptional individuals came to dominate cultural memory, reinforcing the impression that sorting revealed hidden truth about who a person truly was. This narrative, while compelling, obscured the more modest and realistic intent behind the system. The sorting hat was never meant to uncover a singular, definitive self. It was meant to initiate a developmental journey. During periods of heightened conflict within the wizarding world, these philosophical tensions became more pronounced. As external pressures intensified, the meaning attached to house identity shifted. Certain traits were valorized more heavily, while others were undervalued. In such climates, the sorting hat's commitment to balanced judgment became especially important. By continuing to evaluate individuals rather than categories, it resisted the pull toward ideological sorting based on fear or expedience. The endurance of this approach across centuries speaks to the robustness of the hat's original enchantment. While human institutions often respond to crisis by narrowing definitions and hardening boundaries, the sorting hat maintained its emphasis on potential and responsibility. This consistency helped Hogwarts avoid becoming an instrument of exclusion during times when the broader magical community was tempted to retreat into division. In examining these contested and consequential sortings, it becomes clear that the sorting hat's greatest strength lies not in certainty, but in restraint. Its judgments are deliberate rather than absolute, contextual rather than predictive. By refusing to collapse complexity into simple labels, it preserves space for growth, failure, and transformation within the structure of the house system. This restraint, embedded at the moment of the sorting hat's creation, would prove essential as Hogwarts entered later centuries marked by ideological polarization and open conflict. The hat's ability to balance choice and disposition, tradition and adaptation, positioned it as a quiet counterweight to forces that sought clarity through division rather than understanding. As Hogwarts entered periods of open conflict within the wider magical world, the sorting hat's function acquired a new layer of significance. What had long operated as an internal educational mechanism was now situated within a society increasingly defined by ideological division, fear, and the pressure to choose sides. During such periods, the meaning attached to house identity intensified, and the consequences of sorting extended beyond the boundaries of the school itself. In times of rising tension, traits associated with particular houses were often interpreted through the lens of contemporary conflict. Courage became synonymous with defiance. Ambition was conflated with a hunger for power. Loyalty was tested against obedience, and intellectual curiosity was sometimes viewed with suspicion. These shifts did not originate with the Sorting Hat, but they shaped the environment in which its judgments were received. Students arrived at Hogwarts carrying expectations formed by family history, political allegiance, and social fear. The Sorting Hat's task under these conditions was more difficult than at any other point in its history. It could not ignore the realities shaping its subjects, yet it was designed to resist ideological sorting based on external pressure. Canonical evidence from later centuries suggests that the Hat continued to prioritize internal disposition and long-term responsibility even when the broader magical community demanded clearer, more immediately reassuring classifications. This restraint is particularly evident in the evolution of the Sorting Hat songs during periods of crisis. While early songs focused primarily on recounting the school's founding and reinforcing unity, later compositions adopted a more cautionary tone. They warned against division, reminded students of shared purpose, and emphasized the dangers of allowing fear to dictate identity. These warnings were not abstract moralizing. They reflected the Hat's awareness of historical precedent and its role in preventing the repetition of foundational fractures. The significance of these warnings lies in their audience. The Sorting Hat addressed children standing at the threshold of institutional belonging, many of whom had already been exposed to polarized narratives. By framing its commentary within the context of tradition, the Hat sought to counteract simplification without provoking confrontation. It reinforced the idea that Hogwarts' strength derived from balance rather than uniformity. During periods of war, Hogwarts itself was never fully insulated from external forces. Students were affected by loss, propaganda, and the erosion of trust within the magical community. Under such conditions, the house system risked becoming a proxy for broader ideological alignment. The Sorting Hat's continued commitment to nuanced judgment helped mitigate this risk by resisting pressure to sort defensively or symbolically. The endurance of this approach is evident in the diversity of outcomes produced during these eras. Students from all houses participated in resistance and reform, as well as in collaboration and compliance. House affiliation did not dictate moral stance. This reality underscores the founders' original insistence that the house system guide development rather than a predetermined allegiance. As the conflict subsided and the magical world moved toward reconstruction, the Sorting Hat's role shifted once more. Its songs returned to a more reflective tone, emphasizing continuity and shared responsibility. Yet the memory of division lingered, prompting renewed examination of the house system itself. Critics questioned whether sorting at a young age entrenched identity too early, or whether it risked reinforcing social fault lines during times of stress. These critiques did not result in the abandonment of the Sorting Hat, but they influenced how its role was understood. Increasingly, educators emphasized that sorting represented a beginning rather than a conclusion. Students were encouraged to view their house placement as context, not constraint, and to cultivate qualities beyond those most visibly associated with their assigned community. The Sorting Hat's persistence through these debates highlights its unique position within Hogwarts. Unlike administrative structures that could be reformed or replaced, the Hat embodied a living continuity between past and present. Its judgments carried historical weight, but they were not immune to reinterpretation. By remaining grounded in discernment rather than dogma, it continued to serve as a stabilizing presence during periods of transition. In this way, the sorting hat functioned not only as a mechanism of placement, but as a quiet counterbalance to the forces that threatened to reduce identity to ideology. Its origins in a fractured medieval world had prepared it, perhaps unintentionally, for the challenges of later centuries. The same principles that allowed it to navigate the founder disagreement enabled it to withstand the pressures of war and social upheaval, preserving Hogwarts' capacity to educate rather than indoctrinate. In the periods that followed major conflicts within the magical world, Hogwarts entered phases of reflection that inevitably turned toward its oldest institutions. The sorting hat, long treated as both a practical mechanism and a symbol of continuity, became a focal point for renewed discussion about identity, education, and the long-term effects of early categorization. These conversations did not arise from hostility toward tradition, but from a desire to understand whether the structures created centuries earlier remained fit for a changed world. One of the most persistent questions concerned timing. Sorting occurred at the moment students arrived at Hogwarts, before they had received formal magical education, and before they had fully encountered peers from outside their own backgrounds. Critics argued that such early placement risked shaping self-concept too strongly, encouraging students to conform to expectations associated with their house, rather than explore the full range of their abilities. Supporters of the system countered that early belonging provided stability at a moment of profound transition, offering social grounding that made exploration possible rather than restrictive. The sorting hat itself did not respond directly to these debates, but its continued operation reflected an implicit position. By maintaining a sorting process grounded in discernment rather than surface performance, it reinforced the idea that placement was contextual rather than prescriptive. The hat did not assign labels meant to limit growth. It identified environments intended to support it. Over time, this distinction became increasingly emphasized in Hogwarts educational culture. Faculty practices evolved accordingly. Greater emphasis was placed on cross-house collaboration, shared projects, and extracurricular activities that encouraged students to interact beyond their assigned communities. These measures were not intended to dilute house identity, but to ensure that it did not become insular. The sorting hat's judgments remained the starting point of a student's Hogwarts experience, but they were no longer treated as its defining feature. This shift in emphasis helped reconcile tradition with modernization. Hogwarts preserved the ritual of sorting while reframing its significance. House affiliation became one element of identity among many, rather than a comprehensive description of character. In this context, the sorting hat's adaptability proved essential. Its judgments continue to reflect potential and responsibility rather than rigid archetypes, allowing the system to function without reinforcing outdated assumptions. The continued reliance on the sorting hat also speaks to a broader institutional truth. Ancient systems persist, not merely because of reverence, but because they continue to perform functions that newer alternatives struggle to replicate. No administrative framework devised in later centuries matched the hat's ability to integrate psychological evaluation, ethical consideration, and individual agency into a single moment of placement. Its endurance reflects effectiveness rather than inertia. At the same time, the sorting hat's longevity invites humility. It stands as a reminder that no system, however well designed, can resolve every tension inherent in education and identity. The founders did not create a perfect solution. They created a resilient one. By embedding adaptability, deliberation, and restraint into the Sorting Hat's enchantment, they ensured that it could remain useful, even as the world that produced it receded into history. Seen in this light, the Sorting Hat's origins are inseparable from its legacy. It was born from a need to manage disagreement without fragmentation, to preserve judgment without freezing it in time. Across centuries of change, it has continued to perform that role quietly, shaping lives not through certainty, but through considered choice. As each new generation of students steps forward beneath its brim, the Sorting Hat repeats a task that is at once ancient and immediate. It listens, weighs, and decides, not as an oracle of destiny, but as a guide toward growth. In doing so, it fulfills the purpose its creators envisioned: to help young witches and wizards enter a shared institution, not as finished selves, but as individuals capable of becoming more than they were when they arrived. If you have enjoyed exploring the origins and long history of the Sorting Hat, and if you find value in these slower, more reflective journeys through the wizarding world, consider liking this video and subscribing to Restricted Section Lore. New long-form explorations are always on the way, and you're always welcome to return to the shelves of the Restricted Section.